Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Heritage Minute podcast. I'm your host, Lt Col retired Steve Simon, class of 1977. Today's conversation offers a behind-the-scenes look at how the United States Air Force Academy tells its story, during moments of challenge, moments of pride, and everything in between. We'll also get into the importance of the enlisted force. Joining me is my friend, Senior Master Sgt. retired Dean Miller. Dean is a former Air Force Public Affairs Specialist who served Academy Strategic Communications on two separate occasions, first as a senior non-commissioned officer and later as a civilian leader. Today he serves as a Public Information Officer with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Dean, welcome. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Steve, thank you very much. It's fantastic to be in the studio, and it's good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Absolutely. It's been a long time, but a couple years, but we're going to get into that later. But we have a lot of very cool experiences over the years. But let's get back to the beginning, which actually our iteration goes back to 2003. You and I both reported to the Academy. And what was the environment? You were in PA, I was in alumni programs, but what was the environment when you arrived? What were you being asked to help with, and what was going on in the nation at the time?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just coming back from an assignment in England, and it was 2003. Obviously, we were deep into the global war on terror at that time.
Right.
I arrived here with the mentorship of many phenomenal Air Force Academy grads, such as my first boss, Brigadier General Ron Rand, class of 1971. And he went on to become an Air Force Director of Public Affairs. A very humble gentleman, the only public affairs officer and possibly the only non-rated officer to be awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. So arriving at the Academy was an extraordinarily special opportunity for me. And there were, strategic issues of the day, just like there always are at the Academy, right. Opportunities to share big stories, national interest. And so it was no different at that time. And one of the challenges was, the cadets were fascinated about the ongoing war on terror. They were fascinated about hearing from folks that had come in from deployments. Mm-hmm. And that was a big issue of the day.
Including you.
I had just come back from a deployment before I had arrived.
So perfectly placed there. What were your responsibilities day to day in public affairs?
So I was media relations. And so preparing news releases, taking media queries, escorting media onto the installation, and more importantly, the responsibility to prepare leaders and cadets for engagement with media to tell our story to national audiences.
We met before I came to work on the Academy. One of the cool things, I know you do so many cool things in PA, and we'll get into that. But one was Jewel of the Rockies, a Rocky Mountain PBS product that before I came on staff, I'm not sure who referred me, but as a Academy historian, I ended up doing a lot of research and writing on that, and I think you were the primary Academy point of contact, right?
I was. So that was an extraordinary project, and I think we worked on it just shy of 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so they want to tell the 50th anniversary of the Academy, and so such a phenomenal challenge. But some of the neat things we got to do was bringing in folks that had phenomenal history. I mean, if you remember, we got to interview the folks from Chicago that ran the bulldozers on this hill in the 1950s to build the Academy. And I remember one of them was telling us they were scared to death to operate a bulldozer and destroy this beautiful, pristine environment to lay the foundation of the Academy. And there were all kinds of other neat opportunities as we worked on that project as well.
Yeah, I remember the interview with General McDermott sitting out there in the honor court. That was a pretty cool one. And I think Walter Netz, the original designer, was on the feature as well. And
oh yeah,
you and I got to do a tethered hot air balloon, and you did even more cool stuff than I did.
Well, no, the tethered hot air balloon was great because my young daughter was out there on the morning, and she thought that was fascinating, although extraordinarily cold. But if you remember, we had actually the hot air balloon was cool. Working with the airfield folks to do that, those producers wanted to do a helicopter nosedive with a nose camera over the cadet area, and there were safety concerns, but we worked through them, and they got that video. But one of the very cool things was they wanted to film a high-G bank with a TG-16 glider over the cadet area, and we used the Twin Otter as a film platform parallel to it. And that was one of the most complex aerial filming efforts I've ever been a part of in my whole career.
I do recall the Arnold Hall premiere, and we had to scramble to find it. It was like one of the first high-def products, wasn't it?
Yes.
So we had to find the right equipment.
That was so the producers, they wanted to have the global premiere of the show at the Air Force Academy for the cadets, which was very special. But it was a high def production, and they had to rent a high definition projector for the Academy. So there we were with the entire cadet wing in Arnold Hall, and the power blew 5 minutes into this thing. And there we are with flashlights with the producers up trying to change circuits or whatever up in the academy. Yeah. And we look up and there's can we help you, gentlemen? And it was a superintendent standing there with a flashlight as we're trying to sort that out. But it all worked out, and it was a great video.
Good times, good times. So let's get back to maybe a little more serious topics. So you're part of the team working, of course, to bolster public trust and confidence in the academy. The academy, of course, always in the national news and not always for positive things. But what did that effort require from leadership and from a communication standpoint?
So as you say, the Academy's always had times of intense national focus and interest. Those are times of great accomplishment and times of institutional challenge. That's been the same throughout our history. It's the same today. We all serve in our own time and deal with the issues of the day.
For sure.
I think the most important lesson I learned at the time was you had a traditional public affairs office.
Right.
The challenges of the day required something new. They established the Director of Communications, which became CM.
Strategic Communications.
That's exactly right. So they brought in retired Colonel Johnny Whitaker, class of 1973.
Yes.
He was the first Director of Strategic Communications as a GS-15. He had just retired not too long before. And he took on those strategic issues and strategic communication efforts of the day that were beyond the scope of your senior Director of Public Affairs. And Lieutenant General Regney had the challenge of preparing our cadets for the global war on terror. There was significant emphasis on bolstering the honor development of our cadets. There was the roles of the staff and the AMTs to support the cadets in new and powerful ways. There was the response to the sexual assault scandal at the time. And the important part is the Academy has high-stakes communication challenges, and the Director of Strategic Communications was able to engage those head-on, preparing our senior leadership to engage national audiences in a way that there was strong trust between the superintendent and the commandant and the dean with that director at the time to tell the right story at the right time to the nation and basically bolster and the national confidence in this institution and the second lieutenants that we were developing at the time.
Quick aside on Johnny Whitaker, of course, I was in XP and we rolled in to see him as well. So you and I actually worked in the same organization for a while there. And as one of the big supporters of the radio station KAFA, let everybody know that Johnny Whitaker was one of the, I think, 6 folks who got together and actually founded that station. So I think that's very cool. So if you're listening, Johnny, hi. So being at the Academy, of course, it seems like it's a little bit higher level of public interest, perhaps, than your average base public affairs office. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. So everything at the Academy was a national issue. That was my experience
exactly.
On my first tour and my second tour as a civilian. You are dealing with national audiences with everything you put out. Of course, there's also local and regional audiences that are interested, but everything has a national focus, and that was a different mindset as a communicator.
Yeah, and I used to, even as a cadet, I remember there was, I don't forget what scandal it was, but it was something like, if this happened at Colorado College, it wouldn't be in the news. It happened at the Air Force Academy. It's big news, and that's just the reality. I mean, that's for better or worse. We are funded by taxpayers.
It's true. When you come to a government institution like a military installation and ask a question as a reporter, we're obligated to work with those folks. Whereas some private institutions, private businesses, private colleges, they could choose not to engage on a topic. We didn't necessarily have that luxury at the Air Force Academy.
As far as telling the Academy story, we answer the questions, but we also talk about things that we want to talk about, or we prime the pump, if you will, on stories. I know the 50th anniversary of the Air Force Academy in April 2004, I was involved in that effort as you were. So that was a fun way that we were able to push out good news. So what are some of the other ways that public affairs gets involved in telling our story?
Sure. So you've got these strategic events at the Academy, those recurring annual events like in-processing and basic cadet training and graduation. Parents' Weekend and all these things. So, in-processing is an interesting time because, obviously looking back a little bit, you had, parents being interviewed as their cadets are being filmed on the bus, right? And on the steps eventually, and the haircuts. And, it's interesting. You hear the hopes and concerns of the parents during that time frame.
Lots of tears.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember there was a time we had a cadet that went through the line wearing an A2 flight jacket. And, boy, they wouldn't let him take it off. And basically they because, he hadn't, from the institution's perspective, that hadn't been earned yet.
Yes.
At every stop of in-processing, he was mentored on the important history of who should earn and wear an A2 flight jacket.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting day.
I saw a cadet once with a shirt that said, "Train this," and they did.
Absolutely. But really this challenge of connecting with the cadets and having the extraordinary responsibility in a mentorship role, for me as a public affairs guy, it was, as leadership selected the best possible cadet to tell a particular story, engaging that person, establishing, where we were going to go with that story, giving them some media guidance on how to best tell their story, establishing that trust, and then watching that cadet, that staff or faculty member hit a home run to a national audience telling a phenomenal story. That was the best part of what I got to do while I was here.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to get into the cadet connection. Before that, and just something that just came to mind and didn't really think about it before that, but about what percentage would you say of public affairs is reactionary and what percent is proactive? Obviously, on day to day, you'd like to be telling the story rather than answering questions. Is that a fair way to say that? I mean, obviously, both are equally important parts of public affairs.
Well, you hope to never be reactionary.
Yeah.
We might know of a story that needs to be told often before, the media or communities call and give us a chance. We have an opportunity to think about it. So, do we have our better days and we have an amazing home run because we've had great time to plan a story? Do we have less time to plan a response? But I think the Academy, the opportunities here, I always felt that what we did here at the Academy was the best possible response. We had a fantastic team.
Yes.
Both times that I had the opportunities to serve, the folks that are selected to serve at the Academy arrive with phenomenal experience,
correct,
and phenomenal skills in their trade, and the ability. And that's all of us. That's not just public affairs. That's our instructors. That's every staff member,
for sure.
And so you've got a highly skilled team. So. On our hardest day, we're not winging it. You've got a lot of brain power and skill approached to any storytelling effort.
Yeah, and of course, going back to Colonel Whitaker, a career public affairs officer, and retired as an 06, and obviously leading a team of a lot of other very, very experienced folks.
And, that's an interesting point because you bring an Academy grad like Mr. Whitaker, retired Colonel Johnny Whitaker, to be the Strategic Communications
Class
Director.
of 73.
He's got that relationship. He's got that trust. As a grad, with the folks that he's serving, because he's walked in that path. And so I think the important part for strategic communications and crisis communications, you don't want to be meeting the people you're preparing to go on camera for the first time on that day. And so that's the important part about having a public affairs team and a strategic communication team that's here every day. We're working with these people every day,
establishing relationships, and trust,
So when Mr. Whitaker had to go and ask the superintendent to step in front of a camera on a hard day or an easy day, that trust is established. And on a different level, that was the same thing I was doing with cadets and faculty before media engagement all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And,
that's super important. They know they're going to get honest answers, and you're going to get fair questions.
And you've prepared them well for what to expect.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, back to the cadet connection. Of course, you had mentioned earlier you had just arrived here from a deployment in the global war on terror. Of course, that was a big part of what was going on. So I imagine that was what kind of helped maybe your experience, your background, your credibility working with cadets, because that was an important part of, again, your job mentoring cadets for media opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most interesting things is, although we didn't have Polaris Hall built at the time, the cadet character development lessons were happening for decades.
Of course.
And as a senior NCO, I was invited to be a mentor to cadets for their first character lesson. And that was a phenomenal honor and a tremendous opportunity. And it carried a lot of weight. The cadets were amazing. They always have been.
Mm-hmm.
The questions they were asking, often about our experiences coming back from combat deployments and the global war on terror, and the expectations they would have in the field, those were phenomenal engagements with the cadets. At the same time, I was also briefing on the deployment line for our airmen and NCOs and officers that were being deployed out of the academy to support global war on terror deployments, and giving them, strategic communications training for likely international media engagement opportunities on their deployments.
Cool. So that, so what stands out about that to you? What did that interaction with the cadets, what did that mean to you?
All the interactions with the cadets over both tours that I served at the academy as a civilian and as an NCO, the cadets are the focus of everyone's effort here at the academy.
Correct.
I have so many great memories working with the cadets. I had the privilege of going through a cadet course with the cadets.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that because you've mentoring with you, it goes two ways. Of course, you mentored a lot of cadets, and you had some experience where cadets mentored you.
100%. I had the opportunity as a public affairs NCO to go through the cadet jump course on the airfield, and I was a student under the leadership of a cadet first class who led our chalk through ground academic training, ground training, and ultimately up on the aircraft. And all this, of course, is underneath the leadership of our airmen that run the course down there, AM 490 course, our airmen and officers that run that course. But like everything at the academy, there's a cadet leadership role. And so a cadet first class led our team and ensured we all made it through ground training. And like everything the cadets do, it's just to a pristine level. I was invited up with my fellow cadets in our chalk. We're in the dorm studying the ground procedures.
Okay.
And ultimately, all of us passed and earned our jump wings.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's great exposure for you, great exposure for the cadets, obviously, to see
absolutely.
An enlisted person doing what they're doing and excelling. So, which brings up another aspect, which to me is very important. The enlisted leaders were added to the cadet squadrons back in 1995, so celebrated the 30th anniversary of that. In fact, I wrote about that in the June 25 issue of Checkpoints. And I call that the second most important change in Air Force Academy history, just behind the admission of female cadets. My dad was enlisted, so I understood 100% the value of enlisted folks, but a lot of cadets didn't at the time. We would see only enlisted experience we had might be the bus driver or the clerk handing out our uniform. We didn't have the opportunity to see the qualities and the characters and the educations and just the leadership qualities. So they were called MTL, military training leaders at the time, I think, then Academy military trainers later. I'd like to get your thoughts on the contributions from that particular aspect of enlisted force role in the developing of future leaders.
Sure. So, developing leaders of character doesn't end on graduation day at the academy. As a senior NCO, as an airman in the field, you are forever both receiving the guidance and orders of the officers above you, but you also have the opportunity and the responsibility to provide some level of mentorship up to these junior officers, often that we have the opportunities to serve in the field. And so at the academy, that's such an important thing. They bring back these highly skilled senior NCOs to fill a variety of roles. The AMT is such an important role because it's within arm's reach of every cadet right there in their squadron. And they can go and talk to these folks about the real, right? What's it like going on in the Air Force? What types of things am I going to experience? And all these tough questions that they might have a hesitancy to potentially pitch their AOC, right? At the same time, the extraordinary skills and experiences that our senior NCOs bring to the Air Force Academy. Right this moment, you have senior NCOs with PhDs and multiple master degrees.
Yep.
I think of Senior Master Sgt. Bonnie Rushing, who's teaching right now over there in Fairchild Hall. Some of the most advanced training that the cadets will have on a routine basis. There's a handful of senior NCOs that are doing phenomenal things at our academy, but there always have been. And the fact that the academy saw fit to elevate their roles and responsibilities and opportunity to interact and mentor our cadets to the officers of character and the warfighters that we need them to be is extraordinary.
Yeah, Couldn't agree more. So you left the academy for a couple years, retired, and then you came back as a civilian. So how had things evolved? And what stayed consistent? How was it when you returned?
Sure. Well, I had an opportunity to graduate on Falcon Stadium myself. I graduated Senior NCO Academy, threw my hat in the air on Falcon Stadium. So I left the Air Force Academy in 2008, and I was selected for an incredible opportunity. And much like our cadets are prepared for advanced opportunities when they depart the institution, I was prepared for a very unique opportunity to be the first senior NCO to be a chief of public affairs for an operational wing. And I went to the 62nd Airlift Wing at McChord Air Force Base in Washington State. Mm-hmm. And that was a phenomenal challenge and responsibility, but I very much felt up to it. I returned to the Air Force Space Command, and I eventually retired from our Air Force in 2016 in the public affairs career field. Okay. Years later, in 2021, I was hired as the chief of media relations at the Strategic Communications Office. Of course, that was COVID, so everything was different. But other than that, that was an amazing. How are things the same or different? Or talk about COVID as well. So just as we opened up with that, the institution is always facing strategic communications challenges. That moment was no different. It was a huge one. I was actually working on a master's degree in pandemic communications. And one of the first challenges I was faced with as the chief of media relations was to put out the press release announcing that the cadet wing would receive the COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. And that became a significant national communications challenge of the day as well. Yeah. And at the same time, I learned about the pandemic math team that helped the academy work through its pandemic communications challenges with the cadets. And that became a significant point within my paper. So here I am talking about a challenge to our national media, helping our cadet wing work through it, but then also it was impacting my own research. Okay. Yeah. Another issue, as you said in the open, about how we dealing with issues of the world and issues of consequence whenever and wherever they take place. And then in 2024, I got recruited by the Department of Agriculture and stepped away feeling very well prepared by this institution once again. Cool. Well, before we get to that, I want to talk about one other interaction you and I had. April 1st, 2024 was the 50th anniversary or 70th anniversary of the Air Force Academy, and you recruited me, I guess we could say. I was on Fox 21 for their morning show, so that was a pretty cool thing. Talk about mentoring. You did some really quality mentoring of me in that instance. So what are your recollections of that? Well, first of all, you were the absolute best person for that opportunity, and we approached that. Although you and I had this great working relationship and were good friends at the time, there was this responsibility to make sure you felt comfortable stepping in front of the cameras. And so what I did for you, I do for anybody that I have the opportunity to prepare for a media engagement. So we work through your plan, your goals for that effort, and the fact that you're going to have a brief amount of time to deliver your key points. Mm-hmm. And man, you hit it out of the park, and we had a beautiful news coverage from that day. You're too kind. It was a memorable occasion. I think it was probably the only time I did a live on-air interview. So, but I appreciate the prep you gave me for that. So thank you. So, and some other cool stuff you did. I think you mentioned the Girls Junior Golf Championship was here, and you were involved in that, I think, as well. Oh, that was an extraordinary opportunity. So in the spring of 2023, the Girls Junior Golf Championship was being filmed on our golf course. We were hosting the tournament, and that gave the institution a phenomenal challenge because that was at the same time we're preparing for graduation. So you have these two national level events being prepared for at the same time. We had the opportunity to take cadet first class at the time, Kelly Murphy, now an officer of character in our Air Force, who graduated in 2023. She took the host of that show, Amelia Miglaccio, now Doran, up in a glider. We had 6 GoPro cameras on that thing. Oh, cool. She flew over our golf course, and they aired that in the middle of the nationally televised golf tournament, and they went live to a cadet we placed in a glider on the golf tournament. On the golf course. Mm-hmm. And Cadet Murphy at the time was sitting in that glider with the broadcaster, and they went live and did an interview about that flight. And Lieutenant Murphy now, she at the time a cadet, she shared her experiences at the academy and what was all ahead. And that reached a national audience of millions. And that was a phenomenal communications win for our institution. It sounds like it. Wow. So, and those are the nuggets, I guess, you as a public affairs person, you try to find and use to leverage the positive. You're fortunate to work with a phenomenal team of communicators, a phenomenal team of Air Force Academy faculty, staff, and cadets that are all willing to say yes take a bit of a communications risk anytime you're doing a live event. And again, we hit it out of the park and told a great story about our institution to a national audience.
Yeah, good for you. Okay, you mentioned earlier that you moved on, and now you're with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. How does that work connect back to the work you do here? Or is it...
Absolutely. So you have, just like you had a small team of faculty and staff that you supported at the academy to tell their story. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the southeast region of the quarter of our state, we've got wildlife officers throughout the entire state. We've got biologists doing tremendous research, and we also have parks officers. I have 8 parks that I'm responsible for supporting, and they all have different communications needs. There's these wonderful stories that you want the state to know about, but you also have the crisis communications opportunities that you have to step up and protect the institution and make sure the community is learning about what's going on. Just last night, we recovered a bear in downtown Colorado Springs, recovered that safely and released it out in the western area of the region.
Okay.
And so those are some of the stories that we do.
Well, and of course, just before we hit record on this interview, I was sharing some videos and photos of a bear that hung out a couple nights ago at our the bird feeder at our Glen Eagle home. So they're definitely You said that's maybe a crisis issue this summer.
Yeah, just a safety note, folks. If you're looking at a bear season, remove your bird feeders until next winter. The bears don't need them, and it's 8,000 calories that'll make them ill. The birds don't need the seed this time of year either. But yeah, so we're going to have a lot of bear activity in the region, and the organization works with the academy too. We do the herd count each year. So we were out on the academy a couple months back, early spring, in the snow doing the herd count of the deer on the academy not too long ago. So it was a neat opportunity. Also, we document the species on the academy all the time. Okay. So it's neat to continue that. The current role touches the academy still.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about the academy is it's essentially a wildlife preserve. I mean, you get deer, and if I couldn't get out of the building the other day, there was a turkey standing right in the front door. So I mean, there's wildlife here. We've seen elk and of course coyotes,
and we document
beavers.
Yep, beavers, and we document bald eagles and falcons over the academy all the time. The beaver refuge that exists. Yeah, there's tremendous wildlife here.
Yeah, fun stuff. So let's reflect a little bit as you look back on your time supporting the academy. What stands out most to you?
Always the cadets first and foremost. The tremendous responsibility to make sure that the great stories reach the American people, because the cadets are doing tremendous work. The faculty is doing tremendous work. And you feel this responsibility to make sure that the American people hear it. At our hardest days, make sure that the right messages reach the American people and that the community, the faith and support in the institution is bolstered and maintained. And you're looking out for future generations. You want that young person to apply and want to continue to apply to be a cadet and a lieutenant and an officer of character in the Air Force and Space Force.
Okay. What do you hope people understand about the work behind the scenes that you guys do so capably?
So communicating on behalf of an organization is such an important responsibility because you're representing the thousands of people doing the good work behind the scenes. And it's such an important responsibility. And, having these amazing connections with your team, having awareness of what they bring to the fight to prepare these officers of character, and the opportunity to tell those stories. It's important to have trust from all those folks, to have strong relationships, and then to professionally step up and tell that story and prepare our people to tell that story.
We're visiting with Dean Miller, and we're just about out of time. In a moment, I'll ask for your final thoughts. But first, a word of thanks to our listeners and a reminder that Heritage Minutes and the Heritage Minute podcast are presentations of the Long Blue Line Podcast Network. New Heritage Minute presentations published Sundays on our social channels in audio and video. Heritage Minute podcast episodes like this one drop regularly as part of our ongoing effort to preserve and share the Academy's history. You can also find us on YouTube by searching Heritage Minutes, and you can watch or listen anytime at usafa.org/heritagehub. That's usafa.org/heritagehub. And don't forget, you can catch This Day in Air Force Academy History every day on KAFA, the Academy's radio station, 97.7 in Colorado Springs, or online at usafa.edu/radio. Well, Dean, one other cool thing that you and I have had a chance to explore a lot of amazing aspects around the Academy, along with our producer, Ted. One of the cool things we did was hike Blodgett Peak down at the southwest corner of the Academy. A lot of people don't know that there's a wreckage up there. A C-49J crashed there in 1943, killing a lieutenant and 2 others. Somber place to be, but a pretty awesome hike, huh?
It was a somber place to be, but an amazing hike. The ability to go up there through, and if you think about it, it was a struggle to get up to that hike in that area. And the purpose was to honor a fallen airman. Yep. We replaced and raised a new flag and rendered honors, and we took photos. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. And I think that's an important way to conclude our talk today. When I left the Academy, I left with many of the same things that we send our cadets out the door with when they graduated officers, but the core values of integrity, service, and excellence. That hike represented those things. When I left to go on and do other things on both occasions, those things remain with me. Mm-hmm. They were with me before I arrived. They were bolstered while I was here. I carry them with me today. And the fact that the Academy does things with integrity, service, and excellence to such a degree, to send people out the door, that it's part of their DNA. And I carry that with me today, and I think that's what I take away from the Academy.
Excellent. Couldn't say it any better. Thanks so much for joining me today, Dean. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Retired Steve Simon, class of 77, and that will do it for this edition of the Heritage Minute podcast. Thank you for listening.
This edition of the Heritage Minute podcast is a production of the Long Blue Line Podcast Network and was recorded on April 30th, 2026.